We're thrilled to have welcomed our first grandbaby recently. But growing this precious human hasn't been easy on our daughter. The unrelenting pregnancy fatigue really took it out of her.
One thing that helped was keeping her fluids up, and she loved Rehydrate. Rehydrate is an essential electrolyte drink made by some great guys right here in Brizzy. It's safe during pregnancy and breastfeeding and is like a magical little energy and hydration boost for mum and bub.
If you're growing a little human or are just feeling a little run down, grab some at Coles today.
When I mentioned that Chudley Sucks thing on Facebook, somebody said that was a rookie error. You don't use weed killer, you use fertilizer.
Oh.
I'm like, that is so good. It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time poor parent who just wants answers now. Hello, my name's Dr. Justin Coulson. I'm here with my co-host, Mrs. Happy Families. Day 3.
Day 3.
We're doing a daily podcast. We're doing our best to keep to time. It's amazing how fast 10 minutes goes, isn't it?
It is, and I'm really surprised you haven't broken up with me yet.
Oh, no, this has been fun. I love talking with you about this stuff. I kind of feel like we're talking about stuff that we don't usually talk about because we're so busy being mum and dad and parents. This has been fun. So we're the parents of 6 children, 6 daughters, aged from early 20s down to our 6.5-year-old. And I've written 6 books about raising happy families. Today, a topic that is, it's probably for adult ears only. You probably don't want the kids to hear this one.
Well, this is something that's been hitting the news a lot in the last few weeks. You sent me an article the other day that has me really just bewildered as a parent about the year 12 muck-up days that are happening. You know, I remember when I was in year 12 not being involved in it.
I'm not surprised you can remember. It wasn't that long ago for you. I mean, goodness me. Did you get involved in Year 12 Muck-Up Day?
No, I didn't get involved in it, but I remember coming to school on the last day and the boys had been in there nice and early and they had gone and collected every single picnic table that the school had and created a pyramid of picnic tables right in the centre of our assembly area.
So I'm just going to pause you right there and say inconvenient, a little bit naughty, but it's actually pretty funny.
It was a pretty good one.
Yeah, like if you've got a sense of humour, especially if they took responsibility for it and put it away later, which
they did.
Which they did. I mean, this is just a bunch of kids who are goofing off and having some fun.
I think the year before, the year 12s, they filled a room up with balloons.
Right.
Like completely filled this room up. They must have been blowing for days.
That's great. So at my school for Year 12 Muck-Up Day, and so I graduated in the very, very early 90s. You were sort of in the mid-90s area. We did this thing, I wasn't involved in it. Some of the cool kids did this thing where they drizzled honey all over the handrails throughout the school.
That is gross.
And I don't actually know. I reckon, because I know that the school was pretty cranky about it, I'd say that they figured out who it was and that they did clean it up, but I don't know for certain. All I know is that they made a pretty big mess.
Can you imagine the ants?
Oh, yeah, it's pretty bad. And it's all undercover, right? The handrails. And so there's no rain to wash it away. It had to be clean. And the other thing that they did was that they got weed killer, went down to the Oval, and our deputy principal at Central Coast Grammar School was a guy by the name of Peter Chudley. I didn't have much to do with Mr. Chudley, but the naughty kids had a lot to do with him, and nobody really liked him, especially the naughty kids that had to deal with him a lot.
Did they do some artwork on the grass?
They did some artwork on the grass with weed killer. Yeah, they went down to the Oval and they wrote Chudley Sucks in the school Oval with the weed killer. And you know, like you can actually laugh at it because even though it's unkind, it's harmless fun. It's the kind of prank that you'd expect from teenagers who are goofing off. Now, I know some people who are going to listen to the podcast and say, oh my goodness, that's appalling. I don't think any of that's appropriate. And I get where you're coming from. But I also think that we want to give kids a bit of latitude and let them let their hair down a little bit. And the Year 12 Muck-Up Day has been a tradition in Australian high schools for decades.
I think for the most part, you know, obviously our memories of it were very harmless and
inappropriate and you want them to take responsibility for it, but pretty funny. When I mentioned that Chudley Sucks thing on Facebook, somebody said that was a rookie error. You don't use weed killer, you use fertilizer.
Oh.
I'm like, that is so good. But anyway, the news at the moment...
The news at the moment is not pretty.
What's happened over the last few weeks in a number of news publications is that teenagers finishing year 12 have been caught creating lists of activities that need to be done on year 12 muck-up day, and you get points for doing different activities. And depending on the seriousness of the activity, and when I say seriousness, I mean how far below community standards you go, you get more and more points, and whoever gets the most points wins the year 12 muck-up day scavenger hunt. They're despicable. They're appalling. But these are actually at the low end. It gets much worse than this. But some of the activities were spitting on a homeless man, punching somebody that you don't know, just, go up and hit a random, go and punch them. There was nudity and exhibitionism and sexual intimacy in public. It leaves me speechless.
Yeah. So I've got a question for you in relation to that. If your child was involved in something like that, how do you respond?
So do you mean if our child? Like
Not our child, please. Let's just...
Wow. Yeah, so that's not a question that I was expecting you to ask. If I had a child and they were caught up in something like that, I mean, first of all, I would be broken. I would be devastated to find that they were involved in illegal activities or in such disrespectful activities that completely, utterly, and in every way lack empathy. That'd be devastating. Before I say what I would do, I think it's worth highlighting that these are news reports, right? And you know what we say when kids get scared about what they see in the news? We say to them, it's only the news because it's so unusual. Things are only newsworthy because it's not what normally happens. We've got so much evidence that kids these days are the worst they've ever been, except that evidence has been around every single generation for the last couple of millennia. Like we always worry about kids these days. And I think that it's right that we worry about a certain proportion of kids because there are some kids these days who really need some help and have some really concerning attitudes and exhibit those through their behaviours. But it's always been the case. There were kids at school when I was at school who would have thought that stuff was funny. They would have said, it's so hilarious. That's the word, right? If somebody's doing something that's despicable, the word is hilarious. It's so hilarious. Why? Because if you can laugh at it, then you're part of the in-group and it makes it okay.
Yeah, so are senior students acting out because they want to be more popular? They want to be included? Why has this become the norm of muck-up?
Well, I think that we need to also recognise or ask the question, is it the norm? And I don't think that it is. That's why it's newsworthy. I don't think that I deal with teenagers every single day. I don't think that this is normal behaviour for teenagers, and I don't think that most teenagers think that it's normal. I don't think most teenagers think that it's cool. I know that there's a subsection of them who do, but that subsection existed when we were kids. And it probably existed when our parents were kids as well. And you can go back generation after generation, and there's always been a subset of the population who's like that. The other thing that I would say is there are adults today who think that sort of stuff's okay as well, and even think that sort of stuff's cool and want to do it for bragging rights or for social media kudos or whatever. So I just don't think that this is typical of teenagers today or at any time. It's not typical. It's only typical of a very small percentage of them. I think it's unlikely that we're going to see this kind of behaviour from this extraordinary class of 2020 that have gone through so much this year.
So do you think this is a conversation we need to be having with our seniors?
I think that that's much more valuable. And I'd imagine that in the schools where these lists have been found, those conversations have been more than had. I reckon the riot act would have been read out to these kids. As a parent, let's talk about what we can do proactively. If you've got a child who's in year 12, you want to have a chat with them like you would before schoolies. You want to have a chat with them and say, it's almost over. It's been quite a year. What are your plans? We've heard these stories in the media. We're concerned for you. And then I'd go through my 3 E's of effective discipline. Let's explore. What are your thoughts when you hear about these lists? How would it affect our family? How would it affect you if you were to be caught up and involved in any of this? Like any teenager who's sitting down with their parent and actually having that conversation is probably not going to go ahead with any of that behaviour. You might explain what your expectations are, but I'd do that pretty briefly. They don't need a lecture. They already know. And then I'd empower them. I'd say, well, what I would say to our kids is we've got a daughter, Abby, who's finishing year 12 right now. And I'd say, Abby, I hope you have a great time when year 12's finished. I hope you really enjoy being with your friends. I believe in you. I trust you. I love you. I reckon that kind of a conversation where we empower them is going to be so much different. Is it possible that some of them will go, oh, got you, haven't I, Mum? Got you, haven't I? Yeah, I reckon there's going to be a handful of teenagers who do that, but they would do that anyway. They're certainly going to do it if we come down and say, if I ever catch you, so help me. They're going to like, you won't catch me. Don't worry, I'll be really tricky. I'll be sneaky. So I think that that's the better conversation to have. Now, if you've got a child who actually does some of this stuff, that's the bit that gets really hard. And I think that if I was a parent of a child who did that, I'd sit down with them and I'd say, I need you to know that I love you no matter what. I'm so sad about what happened, but I love you no matter what. And I'm not interested in why you did it, because you probably can't give me a good reason anyway. But I want to know what you've learnt because of it and what's going to happen in the future. Let's focus on the future.
I think that's a really powerful conversation to have.
You're the best. Well, I'm glad we got to have this conversation as well. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a rating and a review. And there's been a bunch of reviews that have been coming through lately. I want to read this one to you. It comes from, there's lots of M's and I's and N's. Me, I think it says. And this person said, 5-star review, it's like having a friend hold your hand navigating the tricky world of parenting. Dr. Justin Coulson, thank you so much for this wonderful podcast and all your happy families tips. Thank you. Well, I'm sorry if I got that wrong. Thank you so much for your 5-star review and rating. It's these reviews that actually give us encouragement to keep the podcast going and do everything that we do. Thank you so very much. And a quick note, class of 2020, we think you rock. We believe in you and we think that you can do great things. Please stay away from those scavenger hunt lists, though. I don't think they're going to serve you or our community well at all, or your school or your family. You know what? If you want more info about what we do, visit our Instagram page. You can visit Dr. Justin Coulson's Happy Families on Facebook, or you can jump onto happyfamilies.com.au. Also, a quick reminder tonight, if you're a member of the Justin Coulson's Happy Families membership page, Mrs. Happy Families, you've got something big happening tonight. You're going to be running Book Club.
Book Club, yes, I'm very excited.
So if you're not a member, please become a member and join Book Club tonight. Kylie's going to be going through the first chapters of 21 Days
to a Happier Family.
To a Happier Family. Really excited about that. And we will be doing a Q&A tomorrow night for premium members as well. So loads going on in the membership. If you haven't checked it out, happyfamilies.com.au.